back to the Real News Network. We're in Cambridge with Professor Noam Chomsky. Thanks, Noam. So, look, big picture. The oppositional movement in the United States, progressive, you can say sometimes it's libertarian, it has various aspects to it. As I said in the earlier interviews, in the election, people get caught between wanting to vote for something they think is a better set of policies represented by politicians that can't get elected, and concerned about the far right taking power again. In terms of the next 4 to 8 years, if this economic crisis deepens, even if there's a certain kind of patchwork of it, the extent of unemployment is likely to hit double digits. And the sharpening of the political crisis internationally. What should people do? What if people ask you, ordinary people, what should we do here to create some kind of a movement? What's your answer, and what's the obstacles to creating a national movement in the United States?
Well, the main obstacle is that the country has become extremely atomized. There's very little in the way of association. I mean, we talked in an earlier discussion about what happened to the labor movement. I mean, the labor movement was a major form of association that helped push through significant reforms. I mean, the New Deal reforms were, to a substantial extent, the reflection of large-scale labor organizing, CIO organizing, sit-down strikes, and so on. Or take, say, healthcare, which we discussed a little. Take Canada, a society very much like ours. Canada has a national healthcare system, not the best in the world, but something. We don't. It's much worse. It's even more expensive. So General Motors, for example, says that it costs them over $1,000 more to produce a car in Detroit than across the border in Windsor, Canada, because they don't have the huge health costs. Now, why does Canada have a national healthcare system and we don't? Well, it's because of the relative atomization of American society. There are unions here, strong unions in the 50s, unions in Canada, but they took a different approach towards healthcare. In Canada, the unions took the approach that healthcare should be available for everyone. In the United States, the unions took the position that healthcare should be available for us. So UAW, for example, has, a good, for working people, comparative standards, and had a reasonable living standard, including health care, pensions, and so on. But it was tied to the corporation. It means when the corporation, first of all, others don't get it. And secondly, if the corporation bails out of it, you're in trouble. That's what's happening now. Well, that's the difference between trying to work for the benefit of the larger community and working for yourself. Now, in the United States, drilled into people's heads massively by huge propaganda campaigns is an effort to get people to just focus on themselves and not on others. Now, it's not human nature. It's not even American history. You look back at American history, I mean, the early stages of the labor movement, say right around here in Massachusetts, where workers had their own newspapers and so on, they were against wage labor. I mean, in fact, Abraham Lincoln was against wage labor. He said wage labor is better than slavery, but the reason it's better is because it's temporary. What he really wanted was free labor, not wage labor. And that really goes right back to the Enlightenment. It's workers in the plants in eastern Massachusetts thought that those who work in the plants should own them. We don't want to hire ourselves out to others, become tools in the hands of others. Now, that can be brought back.
Would you say that both on the economic side and the political side, in terms of the democratic side, the issue of democracy, that the fate of America is going to be tied to whether there's a reinvigorated trade union movement or not?
I think that's one core part of it. And there are other forms of popular association too. But an organized public of the kind, in fact, we discussed before, say a town in New Hampshire that makes their own policies and picks a representative rather than voting for someone who says, I'll be your man. There are all kinds of associations which can become engaged in large-scale efforts to determine and fix the political and economic agenda in the form of social life. Incidentally, this is going to be necessary if we're going to survive. There's not going to be any other way to overcome the looming environmental crisis. That requires a real change in social organization. And we should remember how we got into this. I mean, there was, take say mass transportation. I mean, take say maybe the worst transportation problem in the country, maybe Los Angeles. It's a total nightmare. You don't go back 60, 70 years, they had an efficient mass transportation system, electric transportation. It was destroyed consciously by what in fact was technically a conspiracy. They were sentenced in court for it. General Motors, Firestone Rubber, and the oil.
To get to what you're talking about, there's still this issue of state power, especially at the national level, and two political parties that ever seem to have a chance to win. What do you do about this kind of paralysis at that level of partisan politics, and particularly the Democratic Party?
We have a one-party system. There's the business party, which has two factions, Democrats and Republicans. They're a little different. Over time, people do somewhat better under Democratic than Republican administrations. So there's a difference. But they're basically business parties. Their policies are determined largely by funding. They're staffed by representatives of the business community, the independent, the business world, which feeds off of public money, sets the parameters within which policy is made. This is sort of a technical problem at the top level, but the real problem is just lack of political participation. Let me take a concrete example. Take, say, the Obama campaign. It mobilized a lot of people. There is, what people call an army of Obama supporters. Well, if you look at the managers of the campaign and the commentators in the press, they have an agenda for it, and they say it. The agenda is for the Obama army to be waiting till they get instructions from a leader, and then they're supposed to push doorbells and so on to try to advance what's actually called Brand Obama. Okay, that's a totalitarian model. In a democratic model, what would happen is that the army of supporters would be getting together, formulating policies, electing their own representatives to implement them. If Obama goes along okay, otherwise we disregard him and get the policies implemented in some other way. We're not implementing Brand Obama. We're pursuing the policies we want. Now that's just a different conception of how politics ought to work and how the society ought to work at every level, from business to a university to the national economy, in fact, internationally.
Thanks very much for joining us. Thank you for joining us on the Real News Network. There are times when reality just asserts itself, in spite of the haze created by television news and entertainment. Sometimes crisis rips a tear in the fabric of myth and propaganda. Now a profound economic crisis has ripped asunder the American dream itself. Millions of people losing jobs and homes. They lack proper health care and any real sense of security. Since 2001, workers' wages have fallen or remained stagnant, even though worker productivity has risen almost 33%. By 2006, the top 1% of households were receiving 23% of all pre-tax income, more than double what it was in the 1970s. It's the greatest concentration of income since 1928. As unemployment rises, we need to know why this crisis is happening and what we can do to defend ourselves. Why are wages so low? Why is the society so laden with debt? Is it in ordinary Americans' interest to have $1 trillion military budget to project power across the globe? Corporate television news won't ask these questions, let alone try to find answers. Only a truly independent news network can tackle these questions with courage and with ordinary people's interests in mind. We need a news network that's independent of corporations, governments, and political parties. We need the real news. But there won't be a real news network unless we raise substantial funds right away. The current financial crisis has hit our funding hard. Together, we do have the power to turn it around. There are already hundreds of thousands of people watching the real news every month. If everyone pitches in, We can build an internet and cable television network that will change the face of media forever. You can organize house parties, talk to friends at school and at work, send email blasts and spread the word. Distribute this video to everyone you know. Pick up the phone and call a few friends and suggest they visit therealnews.com. Invest just 10 minutes a day to ask friends and colleagues to join the campaign to create a truly independent source of internet and television news. Together, we can build this network. Just 50,000 people at $10 a month gets us to our first level of sustainability. You can help us reach this goal, and when we do, we'll move to television in millions of homes across North America. Help us reach an audience in the millions. Please contribute generously. Spread the word. Let's make the Real News television network a reality.
Your tax-deductible donation makes it possible. Please contribute at therealnews.com.